Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is Professor Hamamoto. The date is July 6th, year 2025. I hope you're enjoying your 4th of July weekend. And it is 4 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And as announced, we have a very special guest today. Her name is Ms. Annalie Cummings. And we're going to be talking about the hidden aspects of the research institution, particularly the University of California, because we have a lot in common in that regard. And plus, we're going to be talking about Orange County. It has a population of 3 million people, and it's the home to the defense industry. It was kind of like Silicon Valley, which gets all the press and publicity now. Before, there was a Silicon Valley. So we're going to learn a lot today. Consider yourself fortunate in listening in on what's going to be a fascinating, personal, private conversation. All right. Here she is, our special guest, Annalie Cummings. Thank you so much for agreeing to sitting in for this conversation.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here. I truly am.
Great. And I think many of the viewers who are watching here were, like myself, introduced to you and your work, your incredible insights with the Sean Atwood show. So I encourage people to go back and watch that interview to get some of the backstory. I'll try to fill in areas that I thought could be profitably expanded upon, such as the meaning of Orange County. Now, what I gathered is that you lived in Tustin, California, in Orange County.
Yeah, I grew up there, born in New York City, and then we moved to Orange County when my mother, a eugenics researcher, got a professorship at UC Irvine. And yeah, we lived in Tustin and Irvine, and for a time I was in Costa Mesa. And so 33rd parallel, life behind the orange curtain. It's not the iron curtain in this country, it's the orange curtain, and the significance of the 33rd parallel and the Freemasons and the defense industry. Like you said, it's been oft overlooked, and the time for that is no moss.
Wow.
So,
where in Tustin did you live? Was that Lemon Heights?
Down the street from the Scientology place. Do you remember that?
I didn't know there was one there. See, it's a small town. There's an old downtown area of Tustin, a vestigial All-American Main Street, but I didn't know there was a Scientology center.
Yeah, there's one of the pretty prominent Scientology places. Not near Old Town Tustin.
Is that Newport Street? Street?
Street names will escape me, but it was by St. Paul's Episcopal Church. There was an Episcopal church sort of near there, and Skyline Drive, ring a bell?
I think that was up in the Heights area, right? Where it starts.
Arroyo was there, and then Scientology. I just remember always driving by the Scientology thing, and so of course didn't know what was what for years and years, but I was like, oh.
Well, that makes sense. I think you were up in the area where the more wealthy, affluent people lived, going up towards Irvine Park, Regional Park, in that direction.
Yeah.
I was living more in the ghetto area on the border of Santa Ana. Just to give you an idea.
With all the good thrift shops. Mm-hmm. I only found that later. All the good thrift shops. I found that years later when I was in high school.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then, of course, your mother worked nearby at the University of California Irvine campus, where I did my doctoral work. And do you want to explain the backstory for the pic that illustrated today's session?
Yeah. So a little bit of backstory, just because it'll make it a little more coherent for folks. So I live with dissociative identity disorder. this is a mental injury caused by use in mind control and organized extreme abuse, which was done by the academic and medical people at UC Irvine, other facilities in the UC system, as well as the Galton Laboratory for Eugenics in London, where my parents met, and then went to Montreal to McGill University, where you and Cameron did the MK Ultra work. And then we went to New York City to Mount Sinai Hospital. And then from there, after her postdoc, she ended up with the professorship at UC Irvine. So that's a little bit of the background. And so you want to go into the Planet of the Apes right away?
The Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, 1978. It was filmed there.
Yeah. Okay. So the Planet of the Apes, I guess maybe I might defer to you on some of the more academic background on this, because my stories are very intimate, they're personal, and they have to do with those locations and then the programming. Okay. Oh, you picked a great one. Okay. So these buildings, designed by Pereira, famous architect, and the social sciences, and UC Irvine was the scene to several big films, this one being a big one. Okay, so as I explained, I was used in mind control programming. One of the programming sequences happened in this, and I have to go in on a Saturday, and I get asked a series of questions, and I think these are questions that almost practically came out of the Stanford prison experiment stuff, or at least was sort of the next gen of that. But I have to be asked, I'm 10 or 11, okay? And I'm asked about whether a man has a wife and she's sick and he needs a medicine. So he goes to a doctor, and the doctor's has a medicine, but he invented the medicine and he wants to charge money for the medicine, but the man can't afford the medicine. So then the question is they put you in this double bind. It's always a double bind. They want to know which way you go. It doesn't matter what way you go. They want to know which way your individual consciousness is going to dissociate and fracture. Okay. And so then you have to decide if it's right and morally right for the man to steal the medicine from the doctor to save his wife's life, or if it's morally right to let his wife die because the copyright of this doctor's patented medicine would be stealing his intellectual property. Okay, so for a 10 or 11-year-old, they're trying to figure out sociological stuff. So I saw this as I was used in very, very organized, structured abuse from pre-birth. So by the time I was 10 or 11, this is way beyond. Listen to my interview with Sean Atwood. Listen to my interview with Charlie Robinson on Macroaggressions 495. Listen to my interview with Richard Willett on Iconic Classified, because that'll give you a little bit more background if you're like, she's coming in partway in the story. I am, because I've already done that, and this is a new piece of work, and there's more to discuss. Okay, so that happens. And after that, I am in tears. And I used to ride all around UC Irvine. Has this thing called the Ring Road. I practically want to call it the Ring Wraith, right? And fairly near where that photo you just put up of the Planet of the Apes scene. So I come out of that building, this Pereira architecture building, and where those stairs lead down, there's actually another set of stairs that leads the other way. And then there's big double doors, and it's just it's always full of spiders and gross. So there's a scene in this movie where they're trying to get away. They're going to be imprisoned, and they actually filmed right in this spot. I hadn't seen this movie. I didn't see this movie for years and years and years, not till I was maybe late teens, early 20s. But that spot where they had in the film they were hiding, I remember coming out of this programming session just in tears because I didn't do the right thing. And then he would, of course, bandy me, like, why? How could you let the woman die? Or no, how could you steal the doctor's work? And they just play you over. And I mean, for 2 hours on a Saturday, this kid. And I come out and I have my little beach cruiser bike, this blue bike, and I could barely get out and get my bike unlocked, and I just sort of threw it and like land on top of it. I'm just laying in snails and spiders under this thing in a wreck. But I pull myself together. I get on the ring road, the ring wraith, and I go down and I get to the Middle Earth dormitory. So people who are looking into this stuff, please note Peter Thiel, technocrat par excellence, who just did a big interview about how he could barely get it out of his mouth that he wants you all dead, is a huge fan of the Tolkien stuff and the Lord of the Rings series. Okay, so these guys, you have to pattern recognize. So you're seeing it there with Thiel, who's now this big front runner, but they've had this going all along. So the dormitory is named Middle Earth. And I get there, complete wreck. I'm dissociated. I'm hungry. I'm emotionally exhausted, been emotionally bullied. And I go into the Brandywine. Yeah, the Brandywine commons where it's like the food, the dining room. And I just get a spot off to the side where I can sit and like pull my shit together, right? And then it's the setup. There's a whole salad bar and there's soup and I'm hungry and I don't have any money. And I just want a bowl of soup. And I'm sitting there replaying this, bullying attack, this Stanford prison experiment done on an 11-year-old who was by herself. No, my mother did not take me there. Like, I go on my bike alone. I do these things, get sent to these places. And so then I have to decide, am I going to steal the bowl of soup to regenerate and get home? Okay. So understand that this occult aspect and these universities and stuff, there's a phenomenon I've noticed in all of this is that there's real stuff going on, such as what I experienced, but the energetic, the waveform of that trauma, of that torture and stuff, all that is there, and it's present in these locations, and it's present in our earth, which is a sentient being as a larger harmonic. That waveform is there. So they're not going to be able to completely suppress it. So what they're able to do with controlled press and media, which is one of the 5 arms of control of this, okay, medical, academic, financial, religion, first pillar, controlled media and press, second pillar, non-government organizations and government organizations, next, military industrial complex, next, and then power elite, and you don't even know who they are, okay? So it's 5 pillars. I hear people, there's this guy talking about 11 pillars. No. You don't understand, though. This is how it works, and it's going to be 5 because 5 is the pentagram, 5 is the human body, head, 2 arms, 2 legs, the Da Vinci. 5 is our heme blood molecule. They're always going to do it in the natural organic architecture because this is inorganic and it has to hide like a really good mimic of the organic, but it's not organic. It's inorganic.
The Vitruvian man.
Yes, the Vitruvian man, right. Mm-hmm. So the Planet of the Apes, my understanding of that, I mean, I'd love to hear what you have to say about some of the larger polemic of how that figures in. But my understanding of that is that they come out with these films that are going to put the idea out there and do it really well. I mean, spectacular filming, great actors, sexy outfits, the, glimmering darkness, glamour, sauce that up. But they have to do that because what they need is they need to put that in the consciousness of the populace in a way that is socially acceptable for digestion. Because if you put the real version, the little girl who's tortured in the building and then goes down in that exact same hole. I mean, the movie had already been filmed by the time I had that experience, okay? But this is a pattern. I'm certainly not the only one that this happened to, but I'm the only one that I know of this, because they keep you isolated and they work you in isolation so you think you're the only one. But they have to put this media out there because it's more than just entrainment. People are saying, oh, they're putting it out there and then it's entrainment. No, it's the cover up to suppress the actual memory that exists there. Because then if someone like me comes out and says, oh, this happened, or they're like, oh, you just saw that in a movie. That's like in Blade Runner. Oh, that's like in, and it's a really great wedge of doubt to shove in there. So then my story seems unbelievable. Oh, and I already know this, general populace says, oh, it's this. So then this is the normalization. This is the waveform balances out, because it's no longer this psychic distortion. It's high art. Yeah, no, it's high fuckery. Okay. So see it for what it is, and, enjoy your movie and have your popcorn, and then understand that it's a play. So talk to me about the Planet of the Apes from your academic angle.
Well, this building here, I used to go there almost daily. I had an office on the fourth floor. It's called the Social Science Tower. And of course, as a
The
aspiring,
tower, the tarot card.
yeah, there you go, the hanging man. And we also shared that building with a program, or as a department, it was called social ecology, believe it or not. And of course,
Yeah.
this is long before I knew about the evil Dr. Ewan Cameron, right? And then if you look past the different angle, past Social Science Tower, then you will get into that inner ring, that concentric circle that you alluded to earlier, upon which the campus was built, the UC Irvine campus. Now, I would like to
circular
add to your...
reasoning. You always come back to the same thing. And if you want to get into real occultism in terms of the black magic, it's a circle in the middle of Aldrich Park. But all the roads around it, just because this is how people build roads, they're linear. So what have you done? You've squared the circle. Anyone who knows ritual abuse will understand that that's a very important part of their architectural structuring, and how the inorganic energies of the ritual abuse and the black magic and the dark magic is able to interface in a 3D world. So this is what they want. They want to be endemic. We're talking about social ecology, so I'm going to go here with this, because I tried to go here with this with Richard Willett, and I was having a hard time, so I couldn't really pull this out. The inorganic force, the force that's behind the force of all this torture and horrible stuff that humanity is enduring at this time, it wants to be endemic. And they use this a lot with the COVID push. Okay, about, oh, it's, the curve and it's going endemic in the population. Endemic as a word means happening to a population. However, we as human beings are very unique. Okay, so let's ditch the Truvian man and go with what's the real experience of this. Everything in our body is made up of substance from the earth body. We are the earth body, and we function like a nerve cell for the nervous system of a sentient being that is a planet. And in a pure state, in an organic state, all these wonderful interdynamic flows between forests and trees and the birds and the lichen and the waters and the soils and the fungi that build structure. And this, the ancients knew that there was a way to be able to read that, to pattern recognize and understand how to interact and be permaculture with it, right? Permanent agriculture, not disruptive, but guardian, a holistic part of this living biosphere. The social ecology, that's a very amazing term, because it betrays its own interest in a distortion, because it is not indigenous with a living system. It is endemic. And so then, again, this hidden hand that's always been there and has always been present with the UC Irvine stuff that I knew, but it took me a long time to be able to decipher this and decode it, is that it is going to be endemic because it's not organic. It wants an inorganic way of interfacing with our organic bioneurology. And so this is why the geneticists, the eugenicists, those terms are interchangeable. I was always told the term genetics, but the Galton Laboratory for Eugenics, which I was taken to over a dozen times maybe, and Tavistock may have been also involved in some of the stuff that I was used in there. They are a precursor to the Nazi stuff, and they are deeply interested in occult. I mean, Hitler was very fascinated with the Hyperboreans and, you know, all kinds of occult stuff. So the UCI and the way that they are doing this and why they're interested in the mind control, which has been a parallel, very cleverly disguised as being a collaborative agenda with the eugenics, is because you're going to have to harness not only the biochemical structure and the molecular biology of a human being, and that's our DNA chain, Watson and Crick, you know, discovering the DNA double helix, but you're also going to have to harness our consciousness. So understanding that we are in a war on consciousness and have been for a very long time, but the technology has advanced to the point where we are about to be in a war on our bioneurology. And it's been there all the time, you know. So your work in Davis and agricultural and that, and the way Bill Gates and buying up all this farmland and, you know, GMOs and the food, you know, agriculture, and then making that all seem funny. Like one of my favorite films as a kid growing up was the National Lampoons. And in that, Chevy Chase's character was a food scientist, and it was just laughed off. It was like, oh, of course he's making like weird chemicals and putting that in your, you know, hot pink Tab cola, right?
Well, UC Davis is the home of the square tomato, the flavor saver tomato. That was the big joke on us. Well, let
Yeah.
me, you know, you're talking about the Occulted University, UC Irvine specific. Give me the inside scoop on William L. Pereira.
Don't know. So I just want to clarify that. Okay. So
Okay.
as a survivor, it's taken me a really long time to come forward. I've been on my own healing journey really since 1991 when I started to fight this and fight like hell. But they kept me pretty suppressed, and I was in projects and have been used much of my life. So
Well, you
trying to
alluded
get
to
to where
him.
I'm at right now, I have to do
Mhm.
the research part like you do, and I
Okay.
also have to do the healing part. And so sometimes I have to step aside from the research and
No, no,
focus
no.
on the healing.
You experienced William Pereira without knowing it. That's the magic. He is the architect, literally, of UC Irvine campus.
Yeah.
He's also the architect of the Transamerica Pyramid in San Francisco, as well as other landmarks. He comes from a Sephardic Jewish architectural family, so I think he goes back to the time of Jakob Frank and this whole tradition, this occult tradition that is very much embedded in the Masonic, Freemasonic tradition. That's William L. Pereira. People need to study him. And we also, in talking a little bit earlier prior to the broadcast, we talked about Fascist Island.
Yeah. Your best place to go shopping, yeah, in Orange County, and
And who was the
go down to,
architect of Fascist Island?
I don't know, tell me. Who?
William Pereira.
Oh, ding, 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 ding.
Yeah.
Ring a bell?
And UC Irvine, if you look at it from the top, it looks like a large-scale Wewelsburg castle that was favored by Himmler. You mentioned the Nazis and their obsession with the occult, with the mazes and the circular motifs.
Mm-hmm.
And really, the only direction you can go is the left-hand path.
Well, and labyrinth, right? And all these labyrinthine passages. So personal survivorship story intersection here is that in this time, so I'm at home, my mother I'm a single only child of a single parent, and she works a lot of hours. She's quite a famous geneticist, but I had my little bike, and so I spent a lot of time alone after school, and some of it was being called to her lab, and then I blank out. And so when I see some of that, it's what I call artifact. It's like, well, I remember getting all the way up to there. I remember banging on this big thick glass and not being allowed to get in. I remember flopping one of the fear states into the mud, and these garter snakes. And UCI, the sad thing is it has this incredible natural ecosystem all around it, and I got to be there, so as did you, before they plowed that all over and put in more junk. But I mean, there were burrowing owls right outside her lab. They're so exquisite. And there were snakes, and there were the endangered gnat catcher, remember that whole trap. But so there's this opportunity to like interface with the natural world, but at the same time, all this programming stuff. So I would often find myself on that ring road and all these labyrinthine things. I mean, the Pereira architecture, to me, when I think of it, it's all these recessed windows. So windows should look out, right? Should see out to the world, but they were all withdrawn. They were all recessed. So then there were shadows constantly being cast on the light that was meant to come in. So
that was a Pereira signature.
Right.
That was a William Pereira design signature. Yeah.
Yeah. The cast the shadow over it. So, I mean, I would go to these buildings that were there, and I would be angry maybe. And then I would wander around, and I'm looking for something because the memory is gone. They have used trauma-based mind control, drugs, electricity, sodomy, sexual abuse, torture, to suppress the memory. And so when you're looking at organized extreme abuse and therapists who are helping survivors with DID, the problem of getting good care has been that they have never seen this shit, okay? But an organized extreme abuse survivor, we have a personality system and a structural system installed as how we navigate the world that is extremely highly tuned. And there is no way that this would organically show up in the consciousness, even of a child who was just, oh, she was neglected and I was working a lot and she had to come with me to all these conferences. And no, this is an artifact that can only exist in someone who has endured a medical procedure over a long time, decades of my life, with access to highly specialized equipment and people who are clearly well-versed in not only occultism, but, social psychology and, developmental psychology and neurobiology, and how they were able to compartmentalize me. And so having gone, to the university and just constantly wandering these halls, what a great metaphor of wandering the halls of your mind and not being able to find your way out. Look at Yellow Submarine Beetles and where does George appear from? Like the hallway and all the doors and stuff, and the doors of perception are cleansed. Everything will appear as it is infinite, and the doors and Jim Morrison. I'm throwing a bunch of stuff in here, but
I'm following you. It was written by Eric Siegel, by the way, Yellow Submarine. Eric Love Story Siegel.
Yeah.
He was out of Yale in the English department. But let me, is it really fair to characterize your experience as you were a human experimental subject? Would that be an accurate characterization?
Absolutely. Yeah. And my mother is an MD PhD. Her name's Moira Smith out of UC Irvine. She's emeritus now. She's an MD PhD in pediatric genetics. And her specialty seems to be developmental neurobiology. She's known as a medical ethics expert. And at one point in our time, sorry, phased out there a little. At our time at UC Irvine, she was put in the position of being on the ethics committee to sort out the UCI fertility clinic scandal. Okay, so the backstory of this is that couples who were infertile wanted to have children, so they were donating eggs and sperm, and then those were being combined in the laboratory, and then these were being cryogenically frozen and then implanted into the women who had donated the eggs and wanted to be mothers, so that then they could have children. Well, the problem was that this was under Francesco Arredondo's lab, was that thousands and thousands of fertilized embryos belonging to couples went missing. Where did they go? Look at all the stuff happening with the organ trade and stolen. Those embryos, and you see, I never said this, and I know this from personal information, but I cannot tell you what that is, that those embryos were stolen and used in biomedical research, and the university profited hugely from that, and then used some of that money to compensate the families after they raised hell. And there was an outcry, and then it came up again and again, and she was on these ethics committees and suppressing it. Okay, so that's the front story. My story from behind was, it was very weird. There was a professor who maybe was in the department you were in. He was professor of Chinese studies, and he lived at the end of a cul-de-sac. 2 doors down was Blake. He was in, that guy's name was Liu, L-I-U. And 2 doors down was Blake. He was
John Liu?
Yes.
I know him.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. I was excited to ask you about that. Yeah, I was friends with his daughter. She was in my class.
Yeah.
And so Blake was 2 doors down. Blake was one of the chemists who was in the Nobel Prize winning ozone layer stuff, and who is now involved in the autism study stuff with my mother. Why are the chemists?
Is that Roland with the ozone?
Yeah. He was the main one who got the Nobel, but Blake was under him, and now Blake's kind of taken over that lab.
Okay. So, these are some heavy hitters.
Yeah. And so Lou, Blake, and then 3 doors down
Lou,
from that,
but the others,
was is it still recording? Sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Was Rojas. Now Rojas was one of the people who worked in the Arredondo lab. Okay, but all of them had kids. And I lived a little bit further over, Moira Smith's daughter, and we all played together, different games. It was fun. At one point, Blake used to let his 3-year-old wander around with his 2 older brothers in University Hills. And at one point, I was mean to him. Okay, I had a lot of anger, and I had to learn to control that. So I wasn't nice to a 3-year-old boy, and I have to forgive myself for that because I was under a lot of pressure. But Blake shows up at my house, yells at me, says I was the ringleader, But we all played together, and then this fertility clinic scandal thing broke, and all of a sudden, I couldn't play with my friends anymore because my mother is on the ethics committee investigating Arredondo and Rojas's lab, and I'm best friends with Rojas's kids. And I can't play with Lou's kids because at one point I had all these kids over to my house and I held a seance and I tried to channel in some bad stuff with a Ouija board that I made. Why? Because I'm seeing this stuff in my own life. I am seeing the rituals.
Was this in the 80s? The fertility egg scandal? What year? 82 or something?
Well, no, later than that. 87 to 89.
Does the name Ricardo Ash, Dr. Ricardo Ash, ring a bell?
Yeah.
He was one of the main kingpins.
Yeah.
He was a Jew from Latin America, and I mentioned that because there was a whole paperclip deal that we don't talk about. They say it was a Nazi thing, but there was a Jewish paperclip operation going on in parallel to that. They like to focus on the bad Nazis, but there was this other stuff going on. Anyway, please continue.
Yeah, I think that the bad Nazis, people just need to... You're being given a red herring. Okay,
yes.
Just see it as that. Nazi stamp, red herring.
Agreed.
Just call it straight out. Okay, just look at this as global cult. And anyone they can get with ego and money and title and privilege, all the same ways that has been done, feudal society since, human beings hit the ground on this rock. It's all the same stuff. It just has an academic, glamour, a glimmering darkness to it. Okay. It's the same thing. So stop, pointing the finger and Nazi this and Jew this, and stop it.
Agreed.
You're wasting your time. It's red herring. Just see it as the global cult that is organized crime doing, intentional abuse of human beings and our biogenetic architecture and our minds on every level possible, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, psychic, all of this. Okay. So back to my story.
Okay. First, let's clarify. University Hills is faculty housing, right?
Yeah. It's faculty housing.
Yeah. And when so you're all living together. Yeah.
Yeah, neighborhood. Oh, Mr. Rogers did not fucking prepare me for this neighborhood, guys. And people talk about, these deep underground military bases, and I wonder what's going on there. And I bet there's they don't need to have a deep underground military base. Now, the weird thing is that El Toro Marine Base and Tusta Marine Base, both Marine Corps, United States military, are in there too. And they have their own bases. And I had interactions with kids who were on those bases too. Those interactions also all had sexual abuse, torture involved, but it's done on a family level and it's a different situation. Okay. But please understand, when you're people are I've heard about this stuff and I want to know, and when are the underground bases going to happen? And, Sean Atwood, bless his heart, I'm so grateful that he offered me a spot on his show, but he wanted to go down the route of tunnels and stuff. Have to understand that the tunnel thing is, again, you're looking at a red herring. They can do this stuff out in the open and no one is going to notice. And in fact, as a kid, they will often put it out there that they will do it out in the open and you'll know about it and you will never be able to say anything. So the trumpeters right now are doing this ad nauseum. I can do this and get away with, take your social security and you ain't gonna be doing shit about it, right? So this will happen. So, the adults were playing out their thing and the kids were just kids. We're like, hey, look, your skin's brown, huh? Mine's white. Cool. You want to go on the swings? Because we don't have the social conditioning yet to have the extreme othering of another being yet. But these other people do. And I showed you this before, so I want to go to this as a case in point.
By the way, as you're finding the photo, did you attend the farm school on the UC Irvine campus?
I had two very dear friends who did. I was taken to the farm school after they had graduated. So this is a school on the UCI campus that's very Montessori so I went there when I was older, but only to look inside the window from the outside in. What do you know about the farm? Why are you bringing that up?
I know that the social ecology faculty would use the children there as test subjects. They would be experimenting them and testing them constantly. And I think the title itself, again, your theme, hidden in plain sight. It's called a farm school. What are they farming?
Yeah, the Cabbage Patch Kids.
Yeah,
the genetically distorted premature babies, right?
Oh my gosh!
They give you the little doll to play with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Quick one there before I show this photo, because you just did the show with Sean about the Sean Combs situation happening in New York City. My friend who was at the farm school was with me when I was taken to Washington, D.C. in 10th grade for Bill Clinton was the first time a president had gone to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial and spoken on Veterans Day. And she and I and my mother went to Washington, D.C. And I remember that whole sequence very well. I was berserker. Oh, and the Holiday Inn Capitol, that's where you will get held if you are being worked. So the Holiday Inn Capitol, don't stay there. Yeah, ask your Uber driver to take you someplace else. So she ends up going to Parsons School of Design in New York City, works for Donna Karan and Hami Hilfiger. And you know where she works now? Come on, Professor.
For Leslie Wexner?
No, for Sean John Clothing as the head of their menswear.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is all, the network is so thick. And, you know, when
Yes.
I've been tracking this for years, and who is this person, and trying to get bits of information, like you've thrown out a ton of wonderful tidbits for me. You know, it's like Hansel and Gretel tracking yourself through this, but they always joke about 6 degrees of separation. And then the pop culture turned it to 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. And then for
Mhm.
me, realizing that, like, oh dear, I am way closer than 6 degrees of intersections on all this. I am like at the anaretic degree of high fuckery on like all these sectors of control, and people who have been able, I mean, I love these people. They are my friends, and on a soul level, on a spirit level, they will always be in my heart, but they have chosen to systematically suppress their own spirit, their own, you know, ethics, their own heart-centered awareness that would lead them away from doing stupid stuff and
Mhm.
associating with stupid things that are dangerous and harmful to living beings and each other. And they have slowly agreed to participate in these things. Okay. So the level of forgiveness for myself for not having been successful, and not being like, why am I just, you know, on the outskirts? It's because I chose my spirit, I chose my heart, I chose to walk a heart path that, you know, has left me with a lot less than these other people. But you know what? It's gonna come back. And so when I look at that anaretic degree of separation, it's part of why I've chosen to come forward, is because I realized that, like, the big names, you all in the audience, you know the big names right now, right? You know the players. I'm telling you, Bill Clinton. Okay, Bill Clinton showed up later on when I was at San Diego. And I'm like 3 rows back. Okay, I'm not up there where, you know, Juliet Bryant is shaking his hand and being whisked off to the island. I'm like put, you know, in the background, extras at the Arlington Memorial Cemetery, you know, at these big things. I'm not front player, but I'm, like I said, the anaretic degree of interaction with all these people. So it's all interconnected, and the people who have been there and they're still able to play off like, oh, it's all going to work out and it's fine, you know, it's fine, it's fine. No, it's not. And your names are going to come up, and it's already knocked at your door, and you're in on this. So just stop and forgive yourself and begin to walk in your heart path, because that's what's going to pull you out of the darkness and help us rebuild this world into what you and I know that it's so beautiful here. I mean, look at these flowers that are going to grow in my garden. I quilt and I know things. There's more to life than this dark stuff, but nevertheless, let's dredge on. Okay,
Yeah, please.
this is me. I'm about 11 here. This is um Corona del Mar Beach, and I've been buried up to my neck in sand. And my father was also at the Galton Laboratory for Eugenics, but was too dangerous to get his degree. Wasn't hiding the occult well enough. Has thrown seaweed covered with flies in my hair. And as you can see, there's stuff here. This is a busy day at a packed Southern California beach in Orange County, and life behind the orange curtain. These people who are on the beach that day will never intervene because they don't see this as wrong. What was their little adage a number of years ago, Professor, that Janet Napolitano of Homeland Security, what came out after 9/11? What was their little moniker? Do you remember that one?
Yeah, they decided that if you see something, say something. So they, in order to get, she was in a pickle because I guess she or her friends were caught in some sort of girl situation. So they exfiltrated her from DC and they made her the president of the University of California system. That's
Right.
Big Sister, Janet Napolitano.
If you see
So that
something, say something, but not that something, not my girl stuff something, not the little girl being tortured on the
exactly.
beach. Oh, but look, University of California.
Speaking of which, we're going to go further south of Orange County to it, and we're going to keep the UC motif going. We're going to go to your undergraduate institution of UC San Diego.
Yes, my dear alma mater.
So let's start with
moment.
a very brief video to show you how. See, all these campuses are really beautiful. I don't know if people who are outside the country or outside the state, these UC campuses are like resorts. It's like you're living the dream. It's in choice real estate. In the case of UC San Diego, it's like in La Jolla. It's like some of the most expensive real estate in the world. It's right by the beach. Let's take a quick view.
They got Ansel Adams to photograph UCI.
You got it.
Show me the video. That was the mothership. Tracking the tomatoes or leather.
Now, Annalie, what's up with that house that's on the precipice there?
That wasn't there, but this is a part of an installation. They have art exhibits installed all over the campus. That wasn't there when I was there, but I know that that's going to be one of them. I can talk about some of the other art exhibits, though.
Okay.
School of the Sun God. There's the Sun God. Whoa, they have a train now? Oh, shit. I'm busy with it. So there's scripts. I was in that lab all the time. Hogside lab is in there.
What's the name of the lab?
Oh, that's one of the labs at Scripps, and the cognitive science laboratory that was doing electric eel studies was in there. We'll segue into the story there.
Okay. Okay, we'll stop there. People can watch it. That's of course the Pacific Ocean, ladies and gentlemen. That's not
that
CG.
music was really creepy. It was like I was gonna go on like Harry Potter and ride on the Hogwarts Express into that place. Yeah. It was awful.
Well, you majored in philosophy. What was this like? I mean, what were your undergraduate years for one? Give us some dates here.
So I get out of Orange County. I graduate from the University High School, which is what I call the Illuminati feeder school of UC Irvine. It's down the street. Right. Lots of people out of there. Will Ferrell, Dita Von Teese, who was Marilyn Manson's girlfriend for a time, So Illuminati feeder school, one of the top 4 public institutions in high schools in California. And I want nothing to do with it. And I go as far away as possible. When choosing colleges, I put my finger as far away as I could go. University of Presque Isle in Maine. Yeah, but I didn't go there. I went to University of New Hampshire in nursing. And then you get reeled back in. And they reel me back in. So leave that. And I go back to Orange County and I have to make up some credits. I have a bunch of AP credits and I go to Irvine Valley College and Orange Coast College. And in one semester, I do 28 units between the two schools because they wouldn't let me take 28 at one because that's ridiculous. But I did the Hermione Granger and teleported between classes or something. I don't know how I did it. And I get enough credits in that first year out of high school to transfer as a junior to UC San Diego. So I transfer there and I start out as a pre-med bio major because that sort of made sense to me. I mean, my mom, and I really want her to love me and it's been horrible. And maybe if I'm pre-med bio and I'm super cool and she'll love me, no, it doesn't fit. So I end up going into philosophy because that made sense to me. But by the end of it, I had enough credits that I had a minor in chemistry as well, because I was pursuing that pre-med path. So philosophy in San Diego is quite an interesting little thing, with the propaganda and the intersection with politics, and how the global cult wants to go in the direction of some kind of communism, socialism, total coercive control of the individual. But they have to sell you that idea. See my talk with Richard Willett on why I know this. But they have to sell you that idea. So UCSD in philosophy is one of these little think tank schools, again, Illuminati feeder, holding tank to farm you out later into other useful organizations, that was heavily based on information from Heidegger, who informed a lot of the Nazi stuff. I took courses on Hegel there. I took courses on Marx and Marxism. Initially, when I showed up, I was way into Ayn Rand and objectivism, mostly because I had a boyfriend who was into that, and you know how that goes. So, but oh gosh, if there was an objectivism society that met at the student building, but the libertarians, they've got a lot going for them, but quite honestly, at the end of the day, they kind of ended up being egotistical, money hungry, sex addict jerks too. So, and if I talked anything related to libertarianism or objectivism in the philosophy circles that were in the department that I really wanted my little ticket from, that was not going to be allowed. The steady diet was communism, socialism. If I talked about feminism or wanted to have any ideas from the East, an Eastern philosophy, the Tao or anything, when I talked to my main mentor there, who is Ian Thompson, who's now the expert on Heidegger, he was like, oh, feminism, yeah, you should check out Charles Bukowski in this book called Women, the Rooming House Magical. So I'm like, oh, cool, tip. Yeah, I go buy all these expensive books, and it is just misogyny on crack, So UCSD and philosophy there is a feeder school. It's coming out of UC San Francisco. Herbert Marcuse, which you informed me in our talks before we did this discussion we're having now, that he's OSS. So tell me what you know. Who are these players, and how are they associated with the military-industrial complex? Because that's where they're coming from.
Let's first look at a clip of one of your philosophical antecedents, Professor Dr. Herbert Marcuse at UC San Diego. Here we go.
I'm not getting sound.
I believe that the fight is just beginning to start. The fight against all those who want to make your university a training school for the perpetuation of a society, the security of which and the prosperity.
Well, this is that's a
Is
clip.
that Angela Davis? Is that Angela Davis?
Yeah, I'll show you in a moment. That was Herbert Marcuse, who was Angela Davis's mentor, right, down in the philosophy department. And she was a famous African-American communist influenced by Marcuse, but he influenced a whole generation of leftists. But as you alluded to earlier, he came to America because he was like Heinz Kissinger, otherwise known as Henry Kissinger. He was an OSS intelligence asset doing workups, profiling the enemy, which would be the Third Reich personnel. So he was in the army, and later they got him a professorship, I think first in Boston, and eventually he wound up where you are, and influenced a whole generation of new leftists. This is a little bit after your time, in the 1960s. And then one of his most
Well, yeah, I mean,
one of his more
go ahead.
prominent disciples was Angela Davis. I'll show you her.
The Berkeley campus has perhaps the most unique tradition of political activity. You have continually assumed the political responsibility of responding to acts of repression and have been capable of involving the masses of the students.
Okay, that's enough of that.
Yeah.
People can look at, I realized quite a while ago that Angela Davis herself was, in her own way, conditioned. She went through some sort of MK Ultra program herself, but her persona, her mask, was going to be that of an angry black radical. Now, I have it on good authority. Huh? Angela
Yeah, and
Davis.
that's been mobilized on every sector possible, right? The angry black woman archetype. In fact, a white woman can have that archetype now.
I was going to say, what's her name? Rachel Dolezal was perpetrating herself as a black woman. But I was going to say that someone told me that Angela Davis, as an undergraduate, I can't remember what it was, a women's college back east, she knew her when she was a white woman. She was passing in society as a white woman, but they mobilized her. They let her hair grow out and they gave her a fro, and she's light skinned, and they made her into a black radical just as surely as they made Ocasio-Cortez into an angry Latinx, right? Or the BLM people of the present.
So let's break this down. Let's break this down. Okay, so that's the upfront, that's the glamour. Let's go back. Okay, so Herbert Marcuse, you're looking at people who are involved with programming techniques and understanding very subtle ways to manipulate psychology and social perception. Mm-hmm. Okay, so then we're talking about this philosophical tradition, and you follow the breadcrumbs, the Hansel and Gretel. Then you're looking at Guy Debord and Society of the Spectacle. And then you're throwing in the occult aspect. They have to tell you what it is, because what they're doing is they are manufacturing consent, and they will tell you what they're going to do. And then they will get you to have the appropriate, as in problem, reaction, solution, the intended emotional response, which is angry, help me, right? And then if you don't do that, then they use the social conditioning piece, which is shame. How dare you take away our beautiful institution? They're going to destroy it. And then they mobilize you in the direction they want, which is the fight has just begun, is what Marcuse says in that clip. I've never seen this clip, you guys. It's very easy when you know what you're looking for and you break down the archontic deception strategy, okay? Because the Cathars had seen this. So why they burned them all on Montségur. And this is the same thing, because the inorganic, which is what these guys have all ascribed to, has no real creative capacity on a wellspring of heart-centered awareness, the way a human being who is authentic and into the organic timelines. So if you want to know how we're going to defeat this, on whatever battlefront yours is, okay? Because it's different for everyone, is you have to learn to pattern recognize, and then you have to learn to pattern interrupt. So in those sequences, you are seeing a very skillful OSS doing a programming sequence with his protege, because you have to have balanced masculine and feminine, right? Okay, this is how it works. You have to have the masculine energy and the female energy. And what they've done in the programming is that anything that is organically human or authentic that they want to hijack, they have to use the same thing and spin it in on itself. So social conditioning, because as humans, we need to work together in tribes, okay? But they're going to throw shame on that, or they're going to move you in this, okay? Just see it for what it is. And then when you get really good at pattern recognizing, and this is a brand new clip, I've just seen it and I can call it out the second I see it, then you can pattern interrupt and you can tell people how to undo this. Okay. And why do I know how to do this? Because in putting my fractured self back together, that was built into 8 compartments under violent storms of intense torture from childhood onward, what they do is the reason why clearing a single scene, a single traumatic incident can be so hard is I would keep coming back into the flashbacks. Same one, but I cleared this yesterday. I got through it, is what they do in the programming is they segment it, okay? So there will be one part in the dissociative identity that holds the body memory. So this is when you're like, everything should be fine, but then you're like walking like an old woman and your hip hurts and you have all this body memory that comes up. That's somatic re-experiencing. Or there's the veridical memory of like what was actually done. And this is waking up in the middle of the night and you're having these nightmares and you're seeing the scene replay, okay? Because it's been a video in your head because the observer was always there recording it, okay? And then you're going to have the part that is the emotive part that just holds all this toxic shame. Like you're walking around with baggage all the time. Every interaction you have, every relationship you have, every time you try and interface with society, you carry that, okay? So, Professor, I saw some of your stuff. I don't know Dr. Hamamoto. I haven't worked with his stuff, but I saw a couple videos going into this. What is this segmenting? You know this very well because you've been talking about this. What is this segmenting where you see the same scene from different perspectives and you can't put it together? What's that called?
I call it fragmentation, dissociation.
The Rashomon effect, right?
Oh, that. Sure.
They Rashomon your mind so you can't put a whole scene together and clear it because you're constantly looking at it from other perspectives. So they're doing this with the programming. Everyone who just saw him play that clip of Marcuse, go back in this recording and watch it again and Rashomon affect it. Look at how they do the imagery with the screen cuts. I mean, look at any of these great directors that all the other directors want to emulate. Look at Scorsese stuff. Look at this. They're all using it. Why? Because it's a programming tactic. Just understand that everything is being hijacked to harness your consciousness to go into dissociation, fear, fight, flight, freeze, flop, fawn. Fawn is the most dangerous, and what they want to do is ping you between fawn, which is, oh, he's so great, I love him, he's going to be nice to me because I'm going to do exactly what he says, and Angela Davis, I'm going to grow my hair out and change my skin color and be so awesome, and I'll be famous, and you'll love me, and this is, Sally Field. Yeah, Sally Field Union, and oh, you really like me, okay? They're just gonna play it, and so just know that what you're seeing roll out is all the physical stuff that's going on, the COVID jabs, the food poisoning, the chemtrails, this autism factor that's popping up everywhere now. That's the biochemical, the molecular biological harnessing that is happening of the physical body archetype, and then the programming through all this propaganda. I mean, these guys were schooled with Himmler. These guys were the early days of propaganda, and now they have it down to a high art, and anything in mainstream.
Dr. Hans Asperger.
Oh,
Hans Asperger, he's Austrian, but he counts for this.
Probably had a few chats with Pavlov, right? And the social conditioning, right?
So you're telling us how to pattern interrupt. You interrupt their patterning.
Yeah, because you know what?
Okay.
Their army's been plotting this for thousands of years, and we're slightly slow on the curve. And this is where I am so grateful to people like you who have built an audience of intelligent, heart-based, interested people who want to know, how do I figure this out? Because most of the populace is way behind on their homework. And I was way behind on my homework too, but mostly because I was trying to dig myself out of, repeated cycles of just being worked by these programs and falling into the traps of addiction and, being used by them, being picked up again, being tortured again. Last time I was picked up was in 2019, and held for about over the course of a month. Some of it was physical and medical stuff, So we have to learn how to defeat it. And how do you do that? You pattern recognize, you understand the archontic deception strategy. They really only have like 5 dance moves, and it's all white man's overbite. It's really unstylish. Okay. It's,
Billy Crystal. Yeah.
Blame the victim. Yeah, right. Have fun storming the castle. You think they'll make it? It'll take a miracle. No, here's your miracle max, folks. Okay. I'm not dead. I was only partly dead. Okay. I'm not completely dead yet. You pattern recognize, you understand their archontic deception strategy, and every single interaction you have with everyone you meet, you use that as a teachable moment in whatever way you think you can be kind and compassionate and show some kind eyes for these poor trumpeters who are like, and then they're like, oh God, it's all caving in. Yeah, have some kind eyes for them, because you know what? The kind eyes is where you're going to be able to finally give them the reassurance that all is not lost. I mean, there's a million times where I have felt like I have been almost completely lost, but I've been able to find it around because of a connection with art and a connection with nature and able to do my homework and study. And it has to be in an organic way. Follow your nose. Find what interests you with this. Maybe you want to look up the Angela Davis stuff. Maybe you want to look up the OSS stuff. Maybe you want to understand, the political structures and these pillars of society and how they've been at. Follow your nose, follow your heart, teachable moments with people you meet. And every single interaction counts. Every single move counts right now, you guys. We have to be efficient, and we have to be a balance between not just this mindset of the Atlantean timelines where a society, a civilization that had completely based their structure on mind collapsed, or not the Lemurian thing. I'm going into this because it segues into the New Age stuff, and there's a lot of traps there. There's some great stuff, but you're going to fall into traps. The Lemurian stuff, which you have this new term, gynocracy, okay? So this is the matriarchal society. It's heart-based. No. This is the New Age stuff, but I saw in the comments on your Patreon, there was this term you were throwing out. So yeah,
I'm the inventor of that term.
Yeah, I know. So this is like the matriarchal society, the earth-based awareness, but it lacked something in having a good mind and a good technological base. So that also failed. So if you split consciousness into masculine, feminine, no, it has to be integrated. It has to be balanced,
Annalie, could you continue? I mean, let's hear that critique about New Age, because that seems to be presenting a false set of solutions to a lot of people who are very vulnerable. What's your critique?
It's so comforting, and the people who are doing those presentations, how it was great positivity. I just want to bring you back to your center. Help you have some comfort in the world. That's great. Do that when you need to. Find that grounding. There's times when I need that, okay? But there's not a whole lot of female survivors out there who can talk. And the ones who can talk, how we're able to do this is, yes, there's times when I'm, sobbing wreck on the floor and hiding under a blanket because everyone decides to blow up their money on 4th of July, okay? But there's times when you pull together your masculine-centered consciousness, the one that is going to stand up for your right to live without total coercive control from the second you hit this rock running, and you're going to stand up. So balance that, okay? The New Age stuff is really going to steer you down all these consciousness traps. What are they? They're always the same thing. Guru Savior. And then if you go down Guru Savior, you're going to end up with Twilight Master and these people who are going to hijack you into stupid stuff. For a while, I was into hot yoga, and only recently I saw this stuff on how Bikram, who was out of LA, had the hot yoga studios and how he was doing all this sexual abuse to the people who were training with him. And this was yoga, Yeah. So like realizing that the DID, it's been like this long extendo journey in consciousness of being in a hot yoga class for decades on end. What's hot yoga? Stretching you beyond your normal range of flexibility to get you where you want to go, right? And so always remember to forget. That's the amnesic barrier. But the heart-based awareness, never forget to remember. Always remember to forget. Never forget to remember. Stretched, for decades on end. So New Age stuff is going to play the same archontic deception strategy. They're going to want you to project your consciousness outward. Right now, the direction on planet is incredibly clear. Up, you want to know up, sweeping out of the morass of molasses and goo, is in. Go in. Look at all the little pieces. Look at everything in your life because you have seen stuff. And just start from within. And what are the experiences you've had? And how many degrees of separation or Kevin Bacon are you at in your own, orb of awareness with the people you've met and the situations you've been put in? Look in. Do your own life review now. Because the trick with some of the programming stuff and where the self-harm booby traps get you is addiction links. New Age stuff, a lot of people are pushing, oh yeah, just get super high, it's amazing. Yeah, they've been doing this in Berkeley and all these places forever. Timothy Leary, he's part of, was it CIA with him?
Yeah, the Harvard LSD experiments.
Yeah, the LSD stuff came out of San Diego. I talked about that with Sean Atwood. I was muling it directly onto the military bases in San Diego, on the Navy base there. And so the LSD, it's a trap. The ayahuasca, it's a trap. The marijuana, which is everywhere now, and they want it, Colorado legalized, and California and Washington. Why did they legalize? Why now? Because they've got the strains exactly where they want, and they have developed the Brave New World tonic for all the masses, Soma. So get off the Soma and get clear and eat good food that is as, agriculturally sourced as possible so you can get away from some of the processed stuff. That was the stuff in the 70s and 80s. Oh, busy mom, working mom, get the moms out of the home, put them in jobs, empowerment. And now your kids are eating, all this junk, and I'm in daycare and I'm eating lollipops, and oh my God, the Disneyland high fuckery of it all. So just stop, get clear. Don't fall into the traps. And when you do fall into the traps, forgive yourself, see it for what it is, and know that we are in a time on Earth where humanity is facing the absolute best conditioning, the absolute best propaganda, the absolute best technology that this inorganic death cult force has been working towards achieving in all these organizations, these interface connections and people for centuries. Some people are saying it's going back 18,000 years to the fall of Atlantis, okay? And I keep bringing up Atlantis because it's near and dear to my heart with some of how I understand the eugenics stuff and why I chose a soul mission to Earthwalk, because it's crazy. Never come back onto this planet in total amnesia of where my soul has been on this journey of existence. But just know that you're going to be able to find your way through. The only way is with a mind, willingness to look at the material, do your homework, do your research, and at the end of the day, come back into your heart, forgive yourself, be kind to people, connect with the earth, make some art. Art is a wonderful thing because it gives you a roomy field, RUMI, to meet yourself in a space of non-judgment and work some of this stuff out. I discovered quilting. I mean, quilting's always been there. If you listen to my interview with Charlie Robinson, I go into how I was used in the Smithsonian and talking about seeing the AIDS quilt and that juxtaposed with Darwin's Galapagos Island stuff and all these dead birds, and understanding how I've been used like a spark plug in between these mirrors of awareness, because it's always 3D and it's also always occult with these people. So, you know, over the years, I've found my way to quilting. It's a great way for me to work this out because it's very exacting. You've got these angles, your technique has to be spot on, but you're putting together patchworks of pieces and stuff. And so when I'm working this stuff, it's honestly, I'm just quite a boring housewife. I stay at home and I make quilts and I know stuff, you know, but I am able to put some of these other things together in a way that, you know, they are so damn close to being able to completely harness stuff. They just came out with the gene splicing stuff, right? On algology, the study of pain. These guys always use the Bahamian fixed star in astrology as a harbinger for their big public announcements. If you go to something called Astrology King and look up Bahamian fixed star algol, that writer has a wonderful long list of all the ways in which the modern eugenics agenda has always paired their public announcements with the presence of Algol. Algol is known as the demon star. But what is this? This is Medusa. This is the archetype of, she was a maiden. She was in service to Athena. Some say she was the daughter of Gaia. So this is the daughter of the earth who is in service to some form of sacred feminine, but also that warrior feminine, the hearth. And then Poseidon, Neptune, comes in and rapes her in the temple of Athena, and Athena then thinks that Medusa has done this on purpose, and so she turns her into a mutant. She outcasts her. She gives her these like mind-controlled crazy eyes that turns people to stone. This is what my experience has been, okay? I have a genetic blood disorder. I am the genetic mutant. It's part of why they were interested in me. And then every time I try to tell my story and get help, or, you know, even talk to therapists, and they can't hear you. And it's like these people turn to stone because they don't want to hear someone who looks like me tell them that all this stuff is real. It's frightening. It's terrifying. So have your window of tolerance for what you can take in, and then know when you need to step back and hold that boundary and respect your own boundary for how much you can take in. But this is Algol. She was outcast. She was a mutant. And what happens to her head? It gets cut off and then used by, who's the hero? I'm spacing this in.
Kronos?
No, that's Saturn, right? That's the zeitgeist, Saturn. No, and Hercules, and he has her head as the shield, and it's how he's able to save Andromeda from Cetus the sea monster. That's the Leviathan, right? There's Behemoth and Leviathan in all of this Sawatian cult stuff that they're working with. Okay, so all these myths intersect, but her head ended up in Atlantis. All her memories, everything, all of this sources back to Atlantis. So that's my New Age thing. It's taken me decades to get there, figure this out through tiny little bits of rubbish most of the time, so be very, very indigo if you want to take something out of the New Age that's useful. I think the idea or concept of an indigo person is useful, or a starseed person, or an autistic person who is very sensitive and psychically aware and has all this sensory processing stuff going on. This kind of hunting, the Rh negative hunting, the Celtic awareness of connection with the earth, this has always been hunted by this agenda across time. Now they're hunting the autistic kids. So you're gonna find your way through, but it's gonna take work, and it's gonna take heart work, and it's gonna take head work, working together, masculine work, feminine work. You don't have any time to waste. Be efficient, but don't rush. Sometimes the best thing you can do is be like, and don't smoke yourself stupid on some weed that they're selling you because they've genetically engineered it to be perfect soma. Just sit in the silence of your own awe that you chose to be here right now. Honor yourself for that, because this is the hardest mission any human has ever taken, was to be here on Earth right now. So thank you for being here, because there's so many people like me who've been suffering for decades under coercive control at the hand of organized crime groups in medical, academic, all the way up politics, military, industrial. There's kids still hurting, and we can fix this and we can do it right, but we have to work together. So stop othering each other. Stop DEIing each other. We are one race. There is one, and it's humanity, and we can be together on an interspecies level with the flowers and the plants and the birds and the trees and the soil, and just find your magic that is pure and genuine and authentic and organic, because the inorganic is coming. And I know I'm going to sound like the help us, Atreyu, the nothing is coming. The Empress.
You make perfect sense, and you leave us with a great opportunity to grasp. So I want to leave it here on the positive note. Ms. Cummings, that was a wonderful conversation.
Sorry, it's a bit of a monologue. I tend to get... I haven't had a chance to speak in 48 years.
Well, this is your time. This is your moment. So please let me know when you want to return with some new insights. But this is a very...
Thank you, everyone, for listening. And you can do this. We got this.
Thank you for tuning in, everybody. And I'll be back next Sunday, God willing. And again, I'd like to thank our guest today, Ms. Annalie Cummings, for being so generous with her time and efforts. Thank you so much. Okay, bye, everybody.